Hi, I'm Anne Marie with Speak Confident English, and welcome to your Confident English Wednesday lesson. This is, of course, where you want to be every Wednesday if your goal is to advance your English language skills and communicate with confidence. This week, we are continuing in an ongoing series that we have related to job interviews. In the Confident English Library, you already have lessons on how to prepare for a job interview, the most common questions that are asked, how you can answer the number one job interview question, and smart questions that you should ask at the end of the interview. In this lesson, we're focused on 4 surprising tips that will help you be more successful in that job interview in English. In tip number 1, we are going to work on language, but not in the way that you might think. We're actually going to focus on body language and non-verbal communication. So that means, what does your body language say about you and your professionalism or your confidence? The moment that you walk through the door or into the office, your job interview starts. They are looking at you, thinking about how you shake their hand, the eye contact that you give them, how you move. And I know that that might make you nervous, but it's okay. We're going to talk about what is important, what is expected in English-speaking culture, specifically American culture, since that's what I'm most familiar with. If you have a job interview in English and you walk in, you want to appear confident and professional. So the first thing that means is having a straight back and your shoulders are back. The opposite would be to sit like this, rounded shoulders, and we call this a slouched position. Your back is rounded. If you sit like this during an interview, it looks insecure. It could look weak. It doesn't look very professional, so it doesn't give a good impression. Instead, you want to sit up with your back straight and your shoulders back. It is a very confident and professional position. Also important, what you do with your hands and your feet. I know on the inside you might be feeling terribly nervous and you have all that anxiety that you might feel in your stomach. But on the outside, you want to look calm, poised, professional. And one way to help you do that is to make sure that your hands are still. If you spend a lot of time moving your hands and fidgeting or tapping your hand, maybe you're tapping your foot on the floor, those are signs that you are nervous, but they also can show or make you appear that you aren't prepared for the job, you're not prepared for the interview, and you're not the right fit. That is not the impression you want to give. So you want to keep your feet still. You don't want them moving around. You want to keep your hands still. If you're not sure, just keep them on your lap, which is the top of your leg. Of course, it's natural for some of us to use our hands when we talk. I use my hands when we talk. And you can do that a little bit, but work on keeping them still. Eye contact is another important skill, and you do want to make sure that you look your interview in the eye, have a soft, relaxed face. You don't want to stare them in the eye without blinking because that's scary, and you don't want to have your focus somewhere else while you're speaking because it makes it look weird, like you're not paying attention. And finally, let's talk about the handshake because that is very important in English-speaking culture. You will be offered a hand when you enter, that is especially in the United States. So what should you do? Your job is, let's start with here, if they offer you their hand to shake, your job is to take it like this, and a handshake should look like this. You don't want to really squeeze or make a very tight grip because that could be painful, but you do want it to be firm. I do also see in some cultures that are not accustomed to handshakes something like this, where maybe your hand is a little bit limp, we say, and you just take the tips of the fingers like this because maybe it's uncomfortable or it's unusual for you. This is not a great handshake in the United States. You do want it to look more like this. So if it's not something you're used to, just practice it. Just become more familiar with it. The same is true for eye contact or that fidgeting that you might be doing or how you sit. If you're not sure how you appear, try practicing in front of a mirror. Try to sit in front of a mirror and practice speaking and see how you look. And just practice sitting up straight, practice keeping your hands still. We talk a lot about the importance of preparation in job interviews, and your body language is equally important. Tip 2, make sure that you answer every question clearly, but don't talk too much. Let's talk about what that really means. So in the interview, you will be asked some challenging questions. Questions such as, what is your leadership style? Or have you ever disagreed with your boss? If yes, what happened and how did you handle it? How would you describe managing a team? Or what is the most challenging aspect of working on a team? These are hard questions, and really the interviewer is looking for clues about your personality, your work style, and your behavior. Your job in these questions is to give clear, specific answers with an example that really describes how you handle or respond or think about these different questions. Let's use the topic of, have you ever disagreed with your boss and how did you handle it? The temptation is to say something very general and vague, such as, I don't really disagree with my boss too much. If I do, we just have a meeting and sit down to talk about it. That is too general. It doesn't really answer the question, and it gives us no information about how you really act or behave in the workplace. So here is something you can use to help you. Think about these 4 questions and use these questions to help you identify an answer that you can give in the interview. What was the situation? Think about the who, what, when, where, the description of what was going on. What was the challenge? What was the real problem that was going on? And what was the action that you took? What happened? And finally, what was the result? Those questions will help you think about specific examples that highlight your personality, your behavior, and work style. You can use those same questions for many of the different common interview questions that you'll be asked, so that you always have a specific example that answers the question directly, and then you're finished. The don't talk too much part means don't change the topic, don't ramble, which means talking without a point or a purpose or direction. You want to answer the question directly, clearly, with a specific example, and then that's it. It's time for the interviewer to ask the next question. Tip number 3, do talk about yourself and do be confident. In English-speaking culture, in a job interview, it is expected that you talk about your accomplishments, your strengths, your unique talents, and that can be challenging. Like all of the tips in this lesson, this is difficult for both native and non-native speakers. Some of us naturally want to be more humble or modest. It might feel arrogant to talk about ourselves or our strengths. But there is a difference between confidence and arrogance. Confidence says, this is what I do well and I'm proud of it. Arrogance says, I'm better than, or I'm smarter than. It is 100% okay to be confident in yourself and to talk about who you are and the contributions that you will bring to the new company. That is what your interviewer is looking for. What have you contributed in the past? What strengths have helped you do well in past positions, and how will that help you in this new company? That's what they're looking for. So use this opportunity. If it's uncomfortable for you, if it's not normal for you, just practice beforehand. Write a list of your particular strengths, achievements that you've had at a previous job, how you contributed to something, and find ways to talk about that in your job interview. And remember, this is very useful for the questions that we talked about in tip number 2 when you give specific examples, because you will be asked questions that will ask you to highlight your different strengths or what you've done to accomplish something in previous jobs. And finally, tip number 4 is beat your competition and make a lasting impression by asking questions at the end. You will be asked this question at the end of your interview. So do you have any questions for me? In fact, in my career, I've had several opportunities where it was my job to hire someone to find the right person for a position. And the candidates who were the most impressive were the candidates who asked questions at the end of the interview. This is your chance to show that you truly want the position, that you've done your homework and you know about the company, you know about the particular position. And it's your chance to make sure that this really is a good fit for you. So don't be afraid to take that opportunity and ask questions at the end. And if you're not sure where to start, don't worry, because as I mentioned, I do have a previous lesson on this topic with 5 smart questions you can ask at the end of a job interview. So if you're not sure what to ask, you can start with that online lesson. And with that, you have 4 surprising tips to help you be more successful in your next job interview in English. Don't forget to go to the other lessons related to job interviews if you have an interview coming soon, so that you can be fully prepared and know how to answer some of the most common questions. Thank you so much for joining me. I love having you here every Wednesday, and I look forward to seeing you next week.